All right, hi everybody. Alicia here. This is a training for how to use Chefs Collaborative's brand guide. The goal of this meeting is to orient Chefs Collaborative staff and board to the brand guide, what it is, when and why we developed it, and how we currently use it. I'm recording this so that we can all listen to it. Unfortunately, the recording with the board members, the recording earlier this week didn't work. So this is just a test of recording another training. So I look forward to your feedback. But yeah, the goal today is to go through the brand guide and talk a little bit about the history of its development and help you all understand how to use it. So I'm sharing a couple links over email with you, but I want to begin with some history with the brand guide. So back in FY13, Chefs Collaborative received an organizational effectiveness grant from the Packard Foundation. They allocated funds for us to work with a branding agency to go through this rebranding. Our tagline at the time was local, sustainable, delicious. It was 20 years into the organization, and we had gone from when sustainability wasn't a part of the national conversation, pre-Food Network, pre the same level of chefs being influencers, to the words sustainable, local, and delicious being everywhere. And so Packard allocated $43,000 to us, which they paid directly to the different stakeholders we worked with. And all of this, again, will be emailed to you. But we assembled a board and staff committee, which I believe had Evan, Sylvia, Matt, Catherine, staff, which at the time was myself, Melissa Kogut, Rob Booz, Jennifer Johnson, and Jillian Gurish. And we also hired a Harvard Business School student, Christy Lee, to help implement the work. So she really liaised with Free Range Studios and us. And so anyway, so jumping ahead there, we sent out RFPs to various agencies. We considered national and regional agencies, and we went with Free Range Studios. We were most excited about what they offered, and they were a great option for us. So we selected Free Range. For context, they worked with folks like The Story of Stuff with Annie Lennox. They did also did the Matrix with the Grace Communications Foundation. So we really liked what they had to offer, and it was the best match. So we went with them. And with Free Range, they began right as we started to get into June of 2013, doing a brand and communications audit. They interviewed members, board members, staff, and other stakeholders to assess the current impact of our brand. And that brand audit is also in a Google Drive folder that I'm sharing with you all. So right around July, the beginning of the new fiscal year, so now we're in FY14, Free Range Studios came to our Boston office and did a story workshop with us. They had this whole card deck, and they really believe in the power of storytelling to flesh out your brand. The book by the founder called Winning the Story Wars by Jonah Sachs is a book that you could take a look at to understand more about their philosophy. But they had even up to like tarot-like cards that had different clues about who our identity was and different cards that we worked on. And there'll be more about that in a minute. So Free Range took a lot of information over 2 days with us, an intensive 2 days, including dinner at Michael Leviton's Lumiere at the time. And then later they presented back to us a brand guide, which we then revised. So what we're looking at today is V3. So there was obviously V1 and V2. And V3 is what we're about to go through. And they did a phone training with our staff and board. And I believe Amy Hartzler, yeah, she was a part of some of our training. And where we left off was really we got an initial training with it, and then we went from there. Then flash forward to the rest of FY14, FY15, getting into the spring of 2014 and then into 2015. We developed a new logo in the winter, spring, and ultimately summer with transition happening. Free Range developed some logos with us. We weren't thrilled. We ended up working with a designer named Sue Walsh to finish our identity. And we also updated our tagline to change menus, change lives. So swapping out local, sustainable, delicious to change menus, change lives. And we unveiled this rebrand at the Chefs Collaborative Summit in Boulder, Colorado, and really merchandised that across water bottles, clean canteens, t-shirts, tote bags, PowerPoints, all that good stuff. So that's where we really had our unveiling, was in September, late September of 2014. So really you're looking at about 1.5 years worth of work, but really an evolution here. So getting into this brand guide now, we'll go through this slide by slide, but I really want to encourage folks to spend more time with the brand guide on their own. This is really just meant to be a preview. So this is the cover. Here we have how to use this document. We're going to spend most of our time on this training on the internal brand. which really introduces you to our messaging strategy, values, and voice. And this really will help us before we get to any of the outward communications. And I can make this a little bigger too. Let's see, there we go. So you can really take a look at this. And the internal brand is where we'll spend time, but then some of these other items related to the external brand can be really helpful, and the storytelling tactics. So I really encourage you to come back to this guide often. It was really good for our staff to go through this too. It's been really great to see the different tools that were really laid out through this intensive work. So our internal brand, read, absorb, enjoy. I apologize for talking at you. Really, this is just more of the thinking behind our brand. So really where we get into it is page 4, which really introduces our story structure. As I mentioned, Free Range believes in the power of storytelling and brand creation. So they took our brand audit that they had done and met with us to go through this story workshop. There in July of 2013, they talked with us more about who we were at the time and who we wanted to be. And they presented their format, which involved the essential storytelling elements, characters, conflict, and plot, which give rise to what we do. And we talked about our conflict, our broken food system, big ag, a lot of really serious, big, dark problems. We also talked about our characters, which is covered in our audit, chefs, food professionals, other stakeholders. And we talked about our plot, what we're doing and why, our programs, the meat of what we offer. And then they prodded to really find out what they believed our core values are. They presented us with a storytelling card deck, and we repeatedly picked up cards that resonated or did not resonate with us and discussed our findings. There was a lot of heated conversation, and it really became apparent that while we believe there are really big, serious issues out there, that our character in our story, our brand mentor, is not solely dark and angry. It's more than that. So what you're seeing here is where we ended up through days of conversation, the audit, and subsequent work. They presented back to us this strategy to outline our brand, and everybody signed off on it. I want to mention that Michael Levitin was also on that group that was a part of this. So our brand mentor, right here, looking at the left, our brand mentor archetype is the revolutionary. So our confidence and perseverance is informed by defiance, and we consider what can be rather than what is, and gladly embrace our role as an urgent leader of change makers. The shadow here is that we could appear naive or alarmist, more committed to ideals than grounded in reality. So along with this, Free Range talked about, no archetype is perfect. We looked at other ones like the diplomat or the archivist, things that had a more neutral tone. And again, we came back to one that really stood up for what they believe in and had a bit of a rebel or rebel rouser side to it, which has its own shadow. So that's that. And this is really interesting because we embrace our role here. Our hero, in turn, the brand hero, so looking down here, is not us. So we are the mentor here, but the hero of our story is not the organization. It's not this faceless organization. It's individuals, it's specific, it's chefs, often early to mid-career chefs who've made some commitment to sustainability in their work. And our core values, which inform everything that our hero does and that we do in terms of mentorship, are courage, connectivity, and transformation. And our gift here is pretty self-explanatory, but the gift is, what do we truly offer that no one else does like we do, that we do all the time? It's creating community. We talked a lot about our gift too, and this was one that I know Derek, during our training, we really pointed out that the work we do is really serious on one side, but it's also really important that it's fun and that we want to engage people. So community gets at that part. As Piper famously said in the brand audit, we're sustainability with cocktails. And so brand gift of creating community while addressing nothing less than wholesale transformation of our food system really gets at the spirit of who this organization is. And all of this is driving toward the identification of a moral of our story, the core message or lesson, the why we get up out of bed, the why chefs are a part of this organization, the why we exist, which we now know is change menus, change lives. And so you see here on the right, the moral of the story, clearly it says change menus, change minds. That was updated shortly after Sarah came on board to change menus, change lives. We had some decision points around how bold to be, and Derek and I talked about this on the training too. Like, do we want to go that far? Do we want to say change minds or change lives? And what I want to reiterate that we said was we decided to be that bold, to go there, that through changing menus, chefs can change lives. You can change much more than food. Changing food is a big deal, and we can do even more. So taken as a whole, this whole brand based on this storytelling structure forms an epic, and that's part of Free Range's philosophy here. And the subsequent pages here go into this in more detail. And really, this part is so good here at the bottom, I won't really edit it. It's just that we connect with people's values, we offer a moral, change menus, change lives, that resonates with them, and then all of that considered, we'll be on our way to breaking through. And that through this work, we really did zero in on the chef specifically as our brand hero. Mark asked a great question, chef and food professional, could we talk a little more about that choice? And during this training, we realized that the brand guide the brand guide exercise, that to really set ourselves apart, we really zeroed in on chefs, but that's who we really found to be our hero. And we have the words food professionals intentionally in our talking points now because we don't want to leave people out there. And we do work with food professionals, but we come back to chefs as a part of our core audience. And so moving on here, the next pages really talk a bit more about our values. And for this recording, I won't spend much time here, but you can see the different parts about courage, connectivity, and transformation. That's on page 5. This gets back to a lot of this idea of balancing the seriousness with the levity, that making change is hard. We're not afraid. We're not afraid to try. We're not afraid to fail, perhaps. That's courage. Connectivity, although our work can be solitary, we connect to stay inspired and we have fun doing it. And that combined with courage and connectivity, we really seek nothing less than really changing our food system. Going to page 6, this talks a little bit more about our moral of the story. And I'll just let you come back to this on your own time here. But this is really our theory of change. Change menus, change lives. Again, update that minds to lives. And that the moral of our story speaks to the pivotal role chefs can play in achieving a large-scale change. Page 7 gets into our audiences, the heroes of our story. And functioning as their mentor, we help lead the movement to transform the way that food is sourced, cooked, and served. Our heroes, these chefs, again, we zeroed in on chefs, but we also include sustainable farmers, local distributors, educators, bloggers, artisanal producers, and kitchen staff, folks who are beyond the word chef, but are in this food professional realm. But when it comes back to it, our hero, we speak directly to them, chefs, people who are curious, committed to incorporating sustainability, and folks who are brave enough to challenge the status quo, people who have a role in change. Here on the right, you see Mary Sue Milliken, you see Derek Wagner plating trash fish at our first dinner in Boston, you see Sammy Mansour, and then you see chefs working behind the pass. I think that's Rick Moonen and some other folks in Trash Fish, Las Vegas. One thing we loved about chefs is that this work is serious, but chefs are really positive. We appeal for chefs' desire to find a better way and folks' willingness to work hard to make what they believe in come to life. Here's something I really want to mention that Sylvia mentioned in our training on the phone. So more about the revolutionary, that we champion our belief that the story of where food comes from should have as much integrity as the meals we create and enjoy, that the revolutionary is tireless, provocative, visionary, and brave, and that we really zoomed in on this analogy here about Paul Revere. So that's a photo of Paul Revere riding a horse. And like Paul Revere, we fearlessly and swiftly spread the word. Our word is change menus, change lives. Rousing chefs from their slumber, helping people wake up to our food system and our need for change. And that just like Revere, he empowered ordinary citizens to protect themselves by letting them know it wasn't safe to sleep. And he offered truth with urgency, reaching a population in danger just in time. And so what I want to say is that we are not wanting to be like Chicken Little, saying that the sky is falling and everything's an emergency, but we're more like Paul Revere, waking people up to what's happening. And I also want to say that one thing to come back to, just like the community part, we say building a better food system, not fixing our broken food system. We intentionally chose positive facing language, I think in part to set ourselves apart. So we're not just saying things are broken or things are failing, but that here's what we can do to make things better. So more on our brand gift, creating community. Our gift empowers and inspires the belief that the adventure being offered is one worth undertaking. Like we've said, this is a little repetitive, that we're sustainability with cocktails. We really want to embody this. The work is hard, long, thankless, and because it's fun, because there's community and we maintain engagement, it's worth it. So really come back to this, but taking a look at the programs happening at the time, Trash Fish Dinners, work with Bristol Bay and locals. Those were some key things that were going on. Locals were newer at the time. I mean, they still definitely existed, but here, this beginning of an articulation at the bottom is something to come back to. Here in the brand gift of creating community, locals are perhaps the most powerful manifestation of the gift we offer our heroes, a fully self-determining community serving the needs of whoever shows up. And I think we've seen over and over again a desire to focus more on locals because they so well embody this gift and are key to changing menus and changing lives. And that's something I'd encourage you to come back to as you think about ways to improve the way that we embody our brand guide. I think that all of our programs offer this, but that our locals, to the point here, are perhaps the most powerful manifestation of this gift. And we can think about how to continue to set ourselves apart by shining a light on that aspect of what we do. So that's our internal brand. It's a lot. And I apologize that this is just one-way communication, but I hope it's helpful. The next pages go through our external brand. These are elements that are ready to go. We can put them directly into communications, use them in conversations with funders, partners, allies. I use these a lot now for emails, things like that. So moving on to page 11, this is something that I know Gina has started to pick up here, but when we talk with potential member chefs, there's some language here to think about. Something I really love in particular down here. Life's too short to create meals you wouldn't want to eat yourself. As we communicate with people, we appeal with empathy and understanding. We know chefs are busy, so are we. We are all about where you are right now. We also want to understand that you're really busy. So we know that what we're doing sounds great in theory, but that it'll be a lot of work too. So we're eager to welcome you into the community, things that really meet people where they are and show that we have an understanding of what's going on in their lives. This page, page 12, I'd encourage development folks, especially, of course, Holly, but also board members who are collaborating with on funding ideas. Check out page 12 here. This has a lot to do with suggested language for talking with funders. I think this is the most vague part of the brand guide for me, but I think you all can take a look at this and really start to make the work and the language that we use relevant to what our funders are interested in and potential funders. I think the more we can do to emphasize specific strategic funding areas within a grant-making body, the better. The more that we can hype our work and make it relevant to what they're doing, obviously the more specific and tangible, the better it will be. Page 13, when we talk about our locals, here's some language that I'd love to encourage Gina and Evan to come back to. Page 13 here. This messaging offers a way of expressing our story about our work with locals and inviting people to lead and also for people to join them. So it's not us leading locals, but it's us inviting them to lead. And I think that's a really important frame for us to keep in mind. And our tagline, totally outdated right here. Page 14, change menus, change lives. This captures our theory of change, that those who dictate menus can force a fundamental shift in our current systems. Something I think Sarah has said well, which is that when we change menus, we can change more than food. We can change lives. We can change whole supply chains, communities, and it's a direct call to action. So we've really been putting this everywhere with hashtags, hashtag change menus, change lives, everywhere you can. And I'd love to encourage people to continue to do that. And this is a great page, words our brand loves. We can use these words as often as we can. Page 15, courage, resourceful, humane, community, collaboration. You'll see our original tagline words are still in here, like local, sustainable, delicious. They're still there. They're still a really important part about what we do, but we also are updating it and adding to this. So this can be considered more of a living document, perhaps print it out and add words, handwritten, or update this whole PDF. I think that could be a room for additions and updates. And we'll get to a Google Doc that's an easy living document that has parts of this in it as well. Page 16, phrases for inspiration and use. Same idea. This could be updated and be thought of as a living document. Some of the favorite ones, while sustainability may be fashionable, it's anything but easy. And being a chef isn't about doing what's easy, that's for sure. So there's a lot in here for us to come back to. Our soundtrack, there's a soundtrack on Spotify. There's a link here down at the bottom on page 17. This playlist has a lot of rock, had some Rage Against the Machine, Queen, The Clash, Stone Temple Pilots, David Bowie, R.I.P. There's a lot in here to come back to and take a look at and again, update and keep running with. I think we could continue to evolve this to embody our upbeat, revolutionary spirit. And lastly, pages 18 through 27, some storytelling tactics and things that sum it all up. So pages 19, 20, and 21, they really talk about practicing the language of storytelling, that stories are most powerful when they're tangible, immersive, memorable, emotional, and relatable. Timer, not a very sensible acronym here, but basically what I take from this is get specific quickly. When we're writing as the organization, the goal is to express our values, courage, connectivity, and transformation clearly and deeply, and in a way that helps people see themselves as a part of the bigger story of transforming food systems. So to do that really well and to connect with people, we need to call on courage, we need to call on specific individuals, we need to call on people's willingness to go against the grain and speak to the desire of everyone in the food industry to be more connected to a community of people going in the right direction. We can also take this opportunity to reinforce our highest goals of wholesale transformation of our food system. So through ways that we can make things more tangible, immersive, memorable. The ideas for memorable is interesting. Tapping into rituals, unexpected plot twists, striking visuals. I think we can do a lot more of this. This is something I don't think we've done a ton of here, but that there's total opportunity for that. And when you get to emotional, hitting an emotional nerve is not easy. I can attest to that in these short emails we try to send out. But by creating a values connection with people, it can be done. So I think the more we can do to try and fail, try, succeed, learn, the better. And there's some more tactics and information in this doc that can really help with that. Page 23. When there isn't a specific hero to orient a communication around, this is a great example. We're having a chef power hour, for example, but say there's value in pointing to the work of the organization, we can use individuals instead. So saying, join Danny Nierenberg to talk about food waste, or, join Alicia Fowler, for example, or, so like joining individuals. Another great example that's updated would be, instead of saying Chefs Collaborative has been connecting change makers in the food industry for 20 years, or support Chefs Collaborative, we could say, Holly uses her background with Family Farmed to connect chefs and producers across the country, speaking their language and anticipating their needs. Something like that's probably more likely to resonate than Chefs Collaborative connects. And so we can do this well and do this better by sending emails as if from chefs and people in our network more often, and calling on the voice of staff rather than having the staff be silent. Page 24 and 25, these are good ones to point out. Telling actual stories for our brand. A little cheat sheet here. We need to choose a hero. Every story, no matter what, has a protagonist. He or she should be somebody that our audience can identify with. It needs to be a problem or an obstacle. We need a breakthrough moment. We need to identify the boon to society, like what will happen. So not just happier, more powerful, or more rich chef, but a better world. So Joseph Campbell, the famous storyteller, calls this boon to society what the hero brings back once her adventure is complete. So you could think about painting a picture of how the success of this hero will make our community more vibrant. For Chefs Collaborative, this could be small and still be effective. For example, people learn how to cook with wild sockeye salmon, and all of a sudden they can source wild, sustainable seafood that feeds fishing communities and nurtures a precious wild resource all year long by participating in the Taste the Wild workshop. And one thing I love to remember here is this idea of choose your sequence. We can start a story anywhere. Too often I think a story could be overwhelming because I think about having to tell a whole story in one paragraph, but we can start it anywhere. So have to jump right in and really just create a moment of personal connection. So it doesn't have to be telling the whole story of our food system to tell a specific story to get folks to take a specific action. And here, these again, I just would really encourage new folks, new board members, new staff to check out page 25. It has a few tips for writing for the web, using hyperlinks effectively, which I think we do for the most part, using active voice, so avoiding passive voice construction, like marketing and communication plans are being developed. Instead saying, we are developing marketing and communication plans. That's something that could be super helpful for future grants and things like that. And using sub-headlines, lists, and boldface type, we do that a lot. Things that make it easy for chefs to scan and for things to be more readable on smartphones. Page 26, there's a storytelling cheat sheet. which goes through several strategic filters. This is heady, but something worth trying to apply, especially on anything you spend a lot of time on. The idea of, does a communication meet these different tests? There's a hero test. Does this communication speak to the belief that it's possible to transform the food system? Does it appear to have been written or spoken in the voice of a real human being rather than a faceless organization? That's a great one, to even if you only do one. That's probably, I would say, one of the most important ones. The values test. Does this communication call on courage, connectivity, and transformation? I'd say a great example of something that did would be our Chef Power Hour communications about the farm workers' rights issue. We had the courage to host this call and connect people seeking wholesale transformation of our food system, and we weren't afraid to invite people that some might not agree with. The moral test. Does this communication inspire the belief that by changing what appears on menus, minds, and lives, will the change follow? And then the gift test. Does what we do create community? That's a great one to think about too. And then there's these tactical storytelling filters. So at the bottom here, it says, ask the questions above. The more you can answer yes, the more likely it is you're telling a compelling story. And don't worry, you won't get yeses to every single one of these every time. That's a relief, because that's a lot of filters. And lastly, visualizing the revolutionary, something that I'd love to plant the seed that we talked on the call about, this being one of the least developed parts of this. I mean, we have our logo and all of the awesome material from Sue, but our overall aesthetics, we want to emphasize our work that we're a fun, disruptive force. We want to use vibrant colors from nature. We want to avoid the quieter, more traditional earth tone palette of the sustainability movement. And it's always important to show and tell. Before we did this, we did a ton of illustrations and more like cartoony-like stuff. And since then, we've used photography, and I think that that's something we just need more great photos. We want photos to tell, to show, not tell, and keep things personable, relatable, and delicious looking. Candid photos can be excellent, and we want to go for images that show chefs not only cooking, but cooking together, or chefs hanging out together. We don't want to just show a chef alone behind the past. We want to think about the practical images that best embody our brand, that show chefs coming together like never before. And I think this is a great one we've been trying to do more. Don't be afraid to be playful and show some personality. We're a network of big-hearted people who love to have fun. Sustainability of cocktails, it's time to show it off. So where we left off in our training with the board is that we want folks to seem like they want to come back to this after everyone's had more time to go through the training and revisit the brand guide and think about, what are things that are working well? What are areas that aren't developed enough? Is it some of the aesthetic pieces? Is it the locals and embodiment of the brand? Do you want to have more easily accessible talking points? And one thing we did hear a lot of was that, yes, people want more easily accessible talking points. So I'm pleased to share that we do have that for you. And I'm going to get out of this so that I can show those to you. And we basically have a Google Doc where you can access different talking points. So you won't be stuck wading through the brand guide every time you want something, but rather we will be able to distill for you other talking points. So what I'll do is I will pick something else to screen share with you right now, so that you can see, oh, there's my face, great. So that you can see the other pieces of what we want to do. So hold on one sec.